big profits. Amazon, Google, Microsoft on firing spree. So many sagged. Who will build AI? Uncertainty for Indian techies too. Decoding big tech's layoff season.
On the Newstrack tonight, Rishad Premji of Wipro, Roshni Nadar of HCL Tech, Baiju Ravindran from Baiju, and Vijay Shekhar Sharma from Paytm. Four of the biggest names in the world of Indian IT will be talking to us about their outlook for the Indian tech sector in 2023. How deep and dark could this tech winter be? Find out on the Newstrack. Let's get started with that big story coming out of Silicon Valley where tech major Google announced 12,000 plus layoffs. This on the back of Microsoft's announcement just last week, causing shock and sending ripples across the tech world, including a big backlash against the likes of Sundar Pichai and Satya Nadella for the manner in which these tech companies have announced these major layoffs.
Just a month ago, the Google CEO was talking of artificial intelligence, job creation, and the Indian stack at Google for India conference in New Delhi. There was no talk, no inkling that Alphabet planned to lay off 12,000 employees in the new year. But layoff it did, shocking the entire IT industry, shaking its roots to the core. Google is not the only one leaving thousands jobless. Microsoft announced 10,000 job cuts last week via an email from CEO Satya Nadella. This includes firings at Microsoft's India Development Center in Hyderabad and at Bengaluru. Amazon fired 18,000 people, increasing the numbers being affected from 10,000 in November. Facebook's parent company Meta also announced it will lay off 11,000 employees. Salesforce reduced its roles by 7,000, nearly 10% of its workforce. Networking giant Cisco terminated 4,000 employees to deal with the economic slowdown. Even Elon Musk fired 3,700 employees at Twitter after buying the microblogging website. CEOs of these companies, from Satya Nadella to Mark Zuckerberg, have given several reasons for these firings. Pichai blamed the dramatic growth during pandemic years for its mass hirings, which were no longer sustainable. According to Andy Jassy, CEO of Amazon, the company took the drastic step to lower the costs for its customers. Mark Zuckerberg put the blame on economic downturn, increased competition, and loss in ad revenue. Microsoft, meanwhile, says customers accelerated their digital spend during the pandemic and were optimizing it now. The layoffs contagion has also hit India, with some companies resorting to terminations. As reported first by Business Today TV, Wipro fired 450 freshers last week. Hirings have also slowed down in the sector. There are, however, outliers who are going against the flow.
Not about Microsoft, all the tech companies that have been in news. Look at their hiring between 2019 and 2022. Their hiring had to be stepped up because the product needs had gone up 3x or 5x. Now that the products have matured, at some day, you need to recognize that we do not need as many people to develop the same products.
Even the global financial sector has witnessed mass job cuts, with titans like Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley, Credit Suisse, Deutsche Bank and Barclays firing thousands of employees. The situation, in fact, is worse than the 2008 financial crisis. Interestingly, the manufacturing sector, which faced the brunt during COVID, is firing on all cylinders now and is attracting talent like never before. Bureau Report, Business Today TV.
Not just in the United States, even in India, several Desi tech companies have announced major retrenchments. Wipro said it was letting 450 freshers go after they failed an internal examination. Before this, Swiggy, Byju's, multiple Indian companies have also announced deep cuts.
Pandemic-induced mass closures, the world moved online at a precedent-breaking speed. E-commerce surged, but the party seems to be ending. IT services giant Wipro has sacked over 400 entry-level employees after they repeatedly performed poorly in internal assessments, even after training, joining the likes of Google and Amazon, as well as Indian firms like Swiggy that have announced downsizing in recent weeks. According to layoffs.fyi, a site that tracks job cuts in technology, more than 30,000 workers have been laid off over the past 2 years in the tech sector in India alone. In its fresh downsizing round, Ola has laid off 200 staff as part of restructuring. In October last year, India's edutech startup Byju's announced shaving off 2,500 employees across product, content and technology teams. Another online education unicorn, Unacademy, has issued pink slips to some 1,500 employees over the last 2 years. In November, food delivery firm Zomato announced, in what it called was a regular performance-based churn, another food delivery company, Swiggy, fired 380 staff this month, insisting it had overhired. A sector grown phenomenally at the start of the pandemic now stares at uncertainty when the pandemic has eased. Bureau Report, India Today.
One of the biggest debates in the modern workplace is around moonlighting. And joining me now at the India Today and Business Today studios at the World Economic Forum in Davos is the man who virtually single-handedly ignited this debate in India. And I've been itching to ask Rishad Premji some of those questions since I saw him post about moonlighting. So welcome, Rishad, and thank you for your time. It's great to have you with us.
Good to be here, Rahul.
Now, you set the cat amongst the tech pigeons when you came out very strongly against moonlighting. There's a big backlash. You're very young, but some of the young techies look at you with immense suspicion. Let's start by why you took the position that you did, because it kind of been going on in the shadows for a long time, and then you decided that enough is enough, you needed to speak out. Let's start from there.
So Rahul, you love controversy, don't you? You want to start with controversy. Look, I think it's been blown completely out of proportion. Right? If you simply look at the term moonlighting, it means having a second job secretively. And the simple argument was that you have a contract with an organization, and violating that contract by having a second job secretively is not right. And it's as simple as that. I'm very much in support of a gig economy. I'm very much in support of people having multiple jobs if they want, as long as they have transparency with the organization. One of our largest crowdsourcing platforms is a platform called Topcoder, which has 1.5 million people across the globe. Many of those are people we leverage in projects that we drive. So the point simply is that if you have a contract with the organization, you need to honor that contract with the organization in a transparent manner. So it was as simple as that. And I think it's taken a life of its own thanks to people in the media and people on Twitter.
No, but also amongst the tech community, it's led to a big debate with demands being raised for companies such as yours and many other legacy organizations being asked to rework their employment contracts in a way that they allowed for greater freedom for what people would be allowed to do outside of their workspace. Rishad Premji, many said, doesn't own me 24/7. I do my job and I should be free to do what I please on the back of it.
Absolutely, and we agree with that. And I agree with that. Certainly you can be pursuing passions and hobbies that don't compete with the organization, that don't violate the agreement both in spirit and letter that you have with the organization. So I think the use of the word moonlighting is also misunderstood by lots of people. People use the word moonlighting interchangeably with flexibility and the gig economy, and that's not the same thing. And so I think it's as simple as that, and I think it's just taking a life of its own that I don't think is fair both to the company or to tech employees across
So
the world.
take us through some of the reactions you got. I heard you had lots of hate mail coming your way and nasty reactions as well.
No, I mean, I not particularly. I mean, people have reactions and people are entitled to their reactions. But I think a lot of words of support and encouragement that people agree fundamentally with that philosophy of being fair to the organization that you work with. So I'm repeating myself. I think this is being blown out of context and proportion, and it shouldn't be.
Okay, let's talk a bit about the tech winter and the fact that there's been a lot of pushback in terms of some employees being entrenched, stories doing the rounds about young techies getting job offers and then not being onboarded, and that create not just any one particular company, but in general. How long do you see this go on for?
A couple of things have changed in the environment, I think, Rahul. One is if you look at the euphoria of the last couple of years, I think it's mellowed a little bit. A great indicator of that mellowing is just attrition. If you look at attrition over the last couple of quarters, even last quarter, compared to what it was 3 or 4 quarters ago, is different. We've seen our attrition come down consistently over the last 4 quarters. And so by design, when you have attrition coming down, you don't have the same euphoria of hiring to replace people that are attriting. We've hired and onboarded more freshers in the first 9 months this year than we have onboarded all of last year. We will honor the offers we have made, and we will bring them on board as is relevant over the course of the next few quarters. So certainly the environment looks different, but and I think that's a good thing for the industry as well. Some of the frenzy and just the jumping ship that happened at a neurotic pace, I think, has slowed down, which I think is just good stability for all organizations. So that's a good thing, I think.
Your stock's also taken a bit of a hit, quite a big hit.
Yeah.
Does that bother you very much when all these reports come out about being the most underperforming stock, etc.?
No, I don't. We were the most outperforming stock the year before, right? So I don't worry too much about the stock market. The advantage also of having stable ownership in a company is that it allows you to think long term, and so to not make myopic decisions about what happens this quarter or next quarter, but really to think about what happens over the next few years. And I'm very excited about the prospects of the industry and our company. We announced order booking this quarter. We've had our highest order booking both on ACV and TCV in the history of the organization. So deals are transacting. I think those deals will uptick over the next few quarters, and that's incredibly positive. I think we've built ourselves a strong leadership team which is stable, which is very exciting. I think we've deeply simplified our organization structure and become much more market-centric, much closer to customers. So I'm actually quite excited and positive and hopeful as the next few years unfold.
When we spoke at the World Economic Forum last at the Wipro Lounge, there was a lot of talk about techies being unwilling to come back to a physical workspace.
Yeah.
To what extent does it still remain a problem in terms of attitudes having changed during the pandemic, and how are you dealing with this desire to stay home and not be in office, most certainly not be in office every day and stay in their hometowns if they can?
So Rahul, about 30% of our people are now coming back at least 3 days a week, right? A combination of people who are working at customer locations and a combination of people who are coming to the office. That's higher than it was before, and it'll, I think, progressively go up from here. We have 3 design principles in how we think about the future of work. 1, the future of work is going to be hybrid. In some shape and form, it's going to have working from home, working from the office. 2 is we've got to think through more purposefully. How do you think about accessing talent? Does talent come to where you are, to the big cities, or do you access talent? That has a component of inclusiveness and diversity. It also has a component of whether you think about building new locations in smaller towns and cities. It may have a component of some people working from home all the time because they want that flexibility, but it would be a very, very small component. And then the last element is that relationships matter and context matters, right? The advantage of the early days of COVID also was that a lot of people knew each other, but with high attrition and deep growth, we've had 100,000 new people join the organization in a little over 2 years because we've grown and people have attrited. And so knowing people is important. And so I really believe the future of work is going to have some sort of hybrid model, and we'll have to sort of think through that. The other big learning for me personally is that you can't be fixated on your point of view. So you have to have agility to think through this. But we certainly want all of our people to come back some of the time, and we'll work and move progressively and purposefully.
At this moment, ChatGPT is quite the rage. Here in Davos, elsewhere, everyone's hooked on, growing really fast. How do you see ChatGPT impact your children, for example, and the future of education?
I think it's early. Look, I think there's certainly a huge, profound development with ChatGPT. I think there's a huge change in the way AI will be leveraged going forward. I certainly see huge opportunity for things like workforce productivity, research, leveraging code, reusability of code. There's a lot of components that are incredibly powerful. I think scalable use cases will still have to develop. I think, how do you think about information versus insight? This is a point of view. I think will also develop. I think context matters. So how are you able to actually sort of get from level 1 to level 2 to level 3 in a dialogue sort of fashion will develop. But the progress is phenomenal. And if you've played with it, it's quite remarkable, the kind of stuff that can be produced in a moment. So certainly, how do we leverage the underlying technologies on which ChatGPT is based to build out relevant use cases for our customers, I think can be very, very powerful as we move forward.
But on the darker side, does it concern you in terms of how it impacts education? The fact that, especially in the Indian context, not what education should ideally be, but because rote and learning is such an important part of the examination process, homework, you can just type it in and we'll write a play for you.
So some schools are now banning the use of ChatGPT. I think that will also happen the world over. So I'm less worried about that at the moment. I'm more worried about how it gets taken as the single source of truth. And how do you find context to ensure that what is getting shared is the source of truth, and it shouldn't become divisive. And so the right sort of structures of regulation and governance and how you leverage this, I think will also be something important that we have to think through as new things develop like this.
If we zoom out from Wipro just for a moment and talk about the IT sector in general, given that there's so much talk here in Davos and elsewhere about recession and economic growth headwinds, how does that impact the Indian IT sector this year and going forward?
The interesting observation, Rahul, for me in the last few days has been that people are less somber about the environment than I thought they would be. Right? People are just generally a little bit more optimistic. Yes, the environment is uncertain, but I think there's more cautious optimism on the environment than there was before. It's also your own context in terms of your own relationships with customers, and so some markets look better for some companies versus other companies, and I see that unfolding as well. But and as I said, deal making is transacting, and I think it's transacting universally across the industry. The beauty of our industry is that it's at some level recession proof, right? Customers spend when they want to spec on the front end digital transformation, when they want to drive more activity on the revenue side with their customers. They also spend on cost transformation, and I see more and more efforts on cost than revenue, and that's some shift that you're seeing over the last couple of quarters. But I'm very hopeful as 2023 unfolds.
Yeah, as one goes down the pandemic, there's so much Indian presence, especially from the IT sector.
Not the pandemic, the promenade.
As one walks down the promenade, there's so much of an Indian presence, especially from the Indian IT sector. So there's Wipro, there's TCS, there's HCL. When you see the others, is there a deep sense of competition between all these IT companies? Swords unsheathed all the time?
Rahul, it's very healthy competition, right? I mean, there's enough business for everybody, and there's a lot of learning you can get from your best competitors. They keep you honest, they keep you on your toes, but the race is long, and so you can't run the race constantly looking to the sides. You've also got to run the race looking in front, but also be aware of where you are. So I think it's good, healthy competition. Frankly, it's fabulous to see the Indian representation generally, on the promenade and here in Davos every year, and it only gets stronger, I find, every year. So it's a good thing. I think it's positive for India.
And what are you picking up in all the meetings that you're doing here at Davos about how India is being perceived in this moment by the global community?
Huge positivity, right? Certainly a great alternative in the world, a bright spot in terms of the economy. So there's general great optimism about India as we move forward, and I think we should only build on that as we move forward.
All right, thank you very much, Rishad Premji, for joining us. Wish you all the best. I see you were very guarded in the comments that you made initially on Moonlighting. You did spark, though, you did stir, though, a hornet's nest.
Say that again?
You did stir, though, a hornet's nest.
No, I know, but I think I'm saying what I feel, and I'm not a controversial person. I say what I believe, and I believe what I said earlier, so I was not trying to be guarded or caged. I was just saying something that didn't masalify your conversation, but it was what I felt.
No, we're not expecting any masala from Rishad Premji, so don't worry about that.
Good.
Thank you so much.
Good to see you.
All the best.
Take
Lovely
care.
meeting
Thanks.
you. When the pandemic was at its peak, Baiju Ravindran was seen as the poster boy of the New India startup story. Now, as the world recovers from the pandemic, and edtech loses some of its lure, questions are being asked whether in the desire to grow too soon, too fast, Ravindran has now started to symbolize a lot of what is wrong with India's startup story. Joining us now at the India Today and Business Today studios at the World Economic Forum in Davos is one of the icons of India's startup sector, Baiju Ravindran. Welcome. You know, the last time I was interviewing you, the mood was very rah-rah. Baiju's was go, go, go. Now, reality seems to be catching up. Life looking a little less rosy now for you?
If you're just thinking of last 6 months, I'll say it's been challenging. If you're talking about the last 6 years, it's been great 6 years. And the next 6 years is going to be better. Now, in terms of go, 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 it might be go, go, take a pause, go again. But in a 30, 40-year journey, which is where you are pursuing your passion to an extent where when you take that long view, everything is supposed to work. So in terms of what education and the role which we have to play, being a pioneer in this sector, like everyone else who grew fast, we have also made our fair share of mistakes. But there is always a strong intent to correct each of those mistakes. It's been a learning exercise. Over the last 6 months, we have learned a lot more in terms of how to adjust to the current macro environment where it's not about growth. It's finding the right balance between growth and sustainable growth. We are in that phase where we are able to, we are already making the shift towards how do we build something which will last for decades.
Before you came in, some of the leading lights of India Inc. were with us, and they had a bit of a snigger when we didn't have the cameras on, saying, see, we always told you so. You were getting excited about the likes of Baiju's, about Paytm. You know, when they're in the private equity rounds, life is very different from when they hit the public markets and real questions are asked, because Baiju's was chasing valuation, not necessarily value.
For us, that's completely misunderstanding, because it was never about chasing valuation. We were also creating a lot of value, because unless and until we were creating that value, there was never you can never continue growing your valuation. There was a time during the last 2 years when like we were growing very fast, and now it's a time where the valuation will also depend on not just growth but profitable growth. But if you take a deep look at our business models, they are fundamentally strong business models. At the end of the day, if you are able to make sure that students are engaged and they are also seeing positive outcomes, our retention rates are like close to 80%. And unfortunately, they are not there. You're not talking to students. They are not on social media. So it's a very long journey. It's a huge responsibility, because we have to make it work. It's such an important sector. We never started this as a business at the end of the day. It's like it ended up becoming one. We are in that pursuit of how to make it not just bigger, but more importantly, better. Once you create that level of value, like there are not many, it's a very difficult sector. If you think of, there are not many large edtech companies. This is a sector which can be defined by Indian companies. And so there is no option, like we have been, if you see over the last 6-12 months, like the objective indicators, what are the real objective indicators? Those who are closest to the action. There's not a single top level exit. And they are the ones, because if things are really wrong on the ground, you will see a lot of them leaving.
On social media and in media commentary, Baiju's received a lot of flack for highly aggressive and allegedly predatory sales practices. That without checking the financial wherewithal of parents, because education is as important as it is in the Indian society, you are trying to prey on that insecurity, that if you take up some Baiju's course, you'd be one step smarter, and therefore your salespeople were accused of trapping parents in a financial trap, oftentimes a financial burden which they couldn't afford. How are you dealing with that?
So when we scale from 300 to like a few thousand sales guys in a matter of 2-3 years, when you have such a large team, there will be one-off incidents, but it was never about, financing was always done by partners. So there is no question of someone who's not eligible for financing getting financing. because it was done by banking partners, and the approval is done based on the CIBIL score and the processes which they follow. Now, in terms of that thin line between mis-selling and aggressive selling, there were a few incidents where we made mistakes, but these are in our continuous improvement in making sure that we are selling this to the right students with the right proposition. Because at the end of the day, we also give students an option to try out for 15 days, 30 days, 60 days across different programs. So they always have an option of figuring out whether they want to continue or not.
No, but many who claimed that they told the organization that they wanted to cancel were not allowed to cancel. There's this data which says from consumercomplaints.it that there were 3,759 complaints, out of which 2,362 were apparently unresolved cases.
That website which you are talking about is not a legit website. You can just go through all those consumercomplaints.in. If you go and check, you check some of the best consumer companies and see and compare the record over. There's no way, even when we resolve, we cannot go and correct that. Now, without actually going into specific details, we have already revamped this entire process over the last few months.
In what way? What corrections?
By digitizing the sales. So we made changes. Previously, we used to go home and used to sell. So it's not, you can't have 100% control in terms of what the sales guys are promising. We have made 100% shift towards a model where we have digitized the sales process. So everything is recorded now. So it's almost impossible to do mis-selling anymore.
The other time you came in for a lot of flack is when you announced that Lionel Messi, the greatest footballer of all time, would be your brand ambassador for the FIFA World Cup. And then again, there was a lot of shock saying that you've just fired 2,500 employees. You've declared a loss of 4,589 crore rupees in the last fiscal. What is Baiju thinking? Why is he spending money on marketing dollars at a time when he should be saving jobs?
So one, in terms of the Messi partnership, so that's not a typical sponsorship deal. It's a different kind of a partnership where we have partnered with him to be the ambassador of our not-for-profit initiative. What not many people know or talk about is the fact that on one side we have this large for-profit initiative. We also have an equally big and probably the largest not-for-profit initiative in education. There are 5.5 million those students, those who learn from our not-for-profit initiative, which is completely free. It's what we call education for all. And even in our revamped sales process, someone who's not eligible, we have enabled our sales guys to actually make them part of the EFA program. Now, this partnership was signed many months back. It's not that, because there was obviously, these are all signed agreements where you need to make the announcement during a certain window before the World Cup. It was not a partnership for World Cup. Lionel Messi is an ambassador for our social program, which is Education for All program.
But how is it done? I mean, ultimately they went on to win the World Cup. You got, your brand ambassador with a lot more mileage than would have happened if they hadn't won. Do you think you got lucky in the end? Has it served any purpose in terms of delivering a quantifiable ROI for the business?
So in terms of increasing awareness in those markets where we are already having strong products with good product market fit in Latin America as well as in Middle East, there's significant improvement in brand awareness. That converting into numbers is because branding is never short term, right? It will take a few months and years for us to see the real results. But the number of inquiries which we got on more partnerships on the Education for All side, we have never got that level of response. The day when we announced the partnership, we got inbound interest from every possible partners.
You said the last 6 months have taught you a lot.
Yeah.
A lot of founders at this moment struggling to raise capital, struggling to keep their businesses on the runway. What would be your advice to them? What have you learned? If you look back at your journey, what would you do differently? What would be your advice to founders who are currently earlier in the journey than you are?
See, the way it's very important to build a business with strong foundation. It's always you need to keep an eye on the unit economics. Just discounting and creating user base in some sectors it works because once you have a large user base you can figure out ways to monetize. But the current times or a macro environment like this, it's important to kind of also it's not just about creating a lot of users and figuring out monetization. That those kind of business models, it's very difficult to build over the next 12, 18 months, or assuming that the macro will change. But when I look back, the last 5 years, to be very honest, like all the companies we're doing based on, that's exactly what was the requirement. Now, if you are building this, keeping a long term in mind, making the shift, now it's not an overnight shift. When you are growing at 100% year on year, if you want to shift and create profitability, but businesses with strong foundation and like good unit economics, they will be able to make that change in 3, 6, 9 months.
How's Davos been for you this year?
It's always been like it's very productive because you can do a lot of meetings and unlike what people think that people come here to enjoy, I don't see anyone like everyone like is in meetings from literally morning till evening, so it's been good.
Earlier people were very envious of your very fast growth. Do you see some of the businessmen who are here now looking at you and smiling, say phas gaya thoda sa ye?
I'm not sure about that. I think it's because you are just talking about like the world will always go through cycles like this. As I told you, like it's not the first 10 years we were profitable. It's not like we were bootstrapped, right? So now when you take a 20-year view, there will be cycles like this maybe 2 or 3 times, but we have significantly increased founder mentality, and that's very important as in when you are scaling from 0 to 1, 1 to 10 and 10 to 100. If you have that, you can survive any crisis. So we are looking forward to a much better 23 and beyond.
Well, it's a very different Baiju that I'm speaking to from the one that I was playing tennis and table tennis with when we were shooting Jab We Met. I wish you all the best. You say you've learned a lot in the next 6 months. You're promising also profitability when you declare your numbers in the coming weeks and months. Let's see how this goes, because it really is in some senses symbolic of the India startup story. So, if you do well, it gives others confidence. If you don't do well, it kind of shakes confidence in the startup sector in general. So I wish you all the best. Thank you very much. Thank you for joining us. Thank you.
Thank you.
To talk about emerging trends in the world of information technology, we're joined at the India Today studios at the World Economic Forum by the chairperson of HCL Tech, Roshni Nada. Roshni, thank you very much for your time. It's a pleasure to have you with us. There's so much conversation about recession the world over, especially here in Davos, and the concern that the tech winter back home could get darker and gloomier. What's the sense that you're picking up about how long this winter goes on for, and when does the winter give way for spring?
So thank you so much, Rahul. I'm so happy to be here. I think the mood was a little more doom and gloom in December. And since then, in January, we've just come out with our quarterly results. We've done, I would say, pretty well. And while in the short to medium term, we see some of the discretionary spend tapering off, I think most organizations all over the world are still very committed to their digital transformation. So from that perspective, I don't think that spend is going to necessarily come down. I think a lot of them are committed to their cloud migration. So that's another area where we're seeing momentum not slowing down. So I think it's much more sectoral. And I don't know, I think the sense that I'm getting is the fear of recession is perhaps a lot more than how big the recession is going to be.
Just a short while before now, Satya Nadella put out a post saying that they're sacking 10,000 people. Yeah. Now, that's a big number coming from a marquee brand. He's essentially talking about how companies are pulling back the pace at which they were hoping to push their digital journeys, and that it's coming down, which is having an impact on companies like Microsoft. How much of that are you feeling at HCL?
Well, I think what happened during the 2.5 years of pandemic was that all industries, including ours, really aggressively hired. Mm-hmm. And the rush to digital transformation was immense. So right now what you're probably seeing is people just being a lot more conscious of costs, margin, inflation, wage as well. So I think this is much more of a reflection of that. We've aggressively hired over the last 2 years. We're still on our path to get more freshers, but we've also leveled out a little bit. But the good news is that from the levels of attrition that we had, which were around 32%, now we're at least down to the early 20s, which is good.
Good news from your perspective, but techies though not so happy with the fact that offers are fewer, I mean still many, but fewer than the past. Do you think some sense of sanity is coming back to just how those salary needles were moving and people were jumping multiple offers in pockets?
I think maybe generally average wage has gone up. But, I think that some of the action in the startup space, I think a lot of people who were also leaving our companies were joining startups. And so I think some of that has kind of tempered off. And so we hope that it continues to improve.
One of the big controversies in the IT sector has been around moonlighting. It's been a big debate. Rishad kick-started the debate when he came out strong against moonlighting. How big an issue is this for you at HCL?
So it's not an issue at HCL Tech. We have very few cases, at least those that we know.
Are you looking hard enough?
We're looking hard enough. And, the thing is that almost 70% of our workforce is now working from home. And it's from tier 3, tier 4 cities. And, we've had records of performance. We've had records of productivity. So I don't consider, at least at HCL Tech, for it to be such a big issue.
And you're okay with most of the workforce being home? Because in India and in the US and elsewhere, we've seen companies draw very strong lines in the sand saying, okay, you have to come back to work at least 3 times. Many going to the extent of saying either you're back at work or you can go back home.
No, I think, Rahul, for us, at least 6 quarters ago, even CVK mentioned that we were proactively adopting the virtual first model, and where if employees want to come back to work 2 to 3 times a week, they can if they're in that geography. What we've discovered over the last year, and I've personally visited as well, there are 30 to 35 cities in India where we've got more than 1,000 employees each. And that's not Bangalore, that's not Chennai, that's not Noida, and that's not Hyderabad. So, when they've moved back, and that cost of living and just generally moving back to cities is that much more expensive, that, the employee today is a lot more empowered than they were before. And like you mentioned earlier, they have more options. So I think that you have to work in a much more collaborative manner. And like I said, our
And for you, it's not impacting performance negatively. In fact, you're saying that you're seeing people perform better.
Yeah.
And you see that being a long-term trend?
I think it's the way people work has changed quite a bit.
One of the things that you've been piloting here at the World Economic Forum is Aquapreneur, where you're trying to find sustainable tech-driven solutions to water challenges. Give us a sense of how that project is going and what you're trying to turn that idea into reality.
So HCL has partnered with Uplink at WEF, which is their open innovation platform, to source technology innovations as well as solutions from all over the world on freshwater restoration, data, water resilience, and a lot of the solutions that exist. So HCL committed 15 million over 5 years. And every year we're going to run a global innovation challenge, and we're going to find 10 aquapreneurs from all over the world and provide them seed capital for scaling their idea. And so in 5 years, if we do it 10 every year, we should have 50 aquapreneurs, 50 innovative tech-driven or data-driven solutions for fresh water.
So which are the ideas that have caught your imagination so far and look really exciting at this moment?
So we've just given our first set of grants. So I met with 2 of our aquapreneurs today, and one of the aquapreneurs was based out of San Francisco, and he was using what astronauts use in space in terms of water recycling. What is the water that they actually drink? And applying that to infrastructure development and seeing how within, let's say, a large real estate project, all the water that is consumed is actually recycled and brought back into the system. And then there's a lady out in Argentina, and she's using a SaaS model that whatever water farmers conserve, they can actually sell those as water credits to companies who are, aiming to go net zero on carbon and aiming to get water credits. So it's a model for them, and it's a SaaS platform on which they sign up, and then they've got companies signing up. So it's for them to have additional income, but also help companies get to net zero.
And you hope to bring some of this back to India?
Yes. So I think for me, at least, one of the reasons for doing this is figuring out all the innovation in the world. But water is a huge issue, especially in our country. And if we can actually get some of these entrepreneurs and their solutions to even scale or pilot in India, it can only help.
News is about putting people first,
Just look at the queues right across.
about asking the right questions to those in power.
It takes no sides.
माँ का दर्द एक दर्द कोई नहीं समझ सकता उस दर्द को.
It reveals, it heals.
Angry people came out on the streets.
Is this the kind of justice system we want in this country?
News is all heart and no hatred.
बिल्किस बानो आज क्या कहना चाहेगी आप?
हमारे साथ जो हुआ है किसी के साथ भी नहीं होना चाहिए.
Experience the news. With me, Rajdeep Sardesai, only on India Today.
It's a new fad in India. Chai shops listing the owner's educational qualifications. Meet engineer chaiwala from Uttarakhand's Haldwani. Pankaj Pandey, a 28-year-old diploma holder in mechanical engineering, is a hit in the town.
मैंने मैकेनिकल से पॉलिटेक्निक किया हुआ है गवर्नमेंट पॉलिटेक्निक गरूर से, तो उसके साथ साथ मैं अपनी जेई के लिए तैयारी भी करता रहता हूँ, जूनियर इंजीनियर के एग्जाम्स के लिए. और जो मेरा मेन जो विजन है वो इसी को आगे लेके जाना है, इंजीनियर चाय वाले को.
Pandey used to work at a call center in Noida earlier. While he is proud to run a tea shop, he is also attempting to clear entrance exams for further education.
अपकमिंग जो भी जेई के एग्जाम्स होंगे सेंट्रल गवर्नमेंट स्टेट गवर्नमेंट के मैकेनिकल के लिए, उनकी तैयारी कर रहा हूँ. और लेकिन मैकेनिकल की तो वैसे वैकेंसी निकलना बहुत कम हो चुका है. कई सारे डिपार्टमेंट तो बिल्कुल ख़त्म ही कर दी है वैकेंसी, लेकिन फिर भी एक उम्मीद है.
Pandey's chai is popular among locals and tourists alike.
कुछ ना कुछ तो करना ही है. अच्छा कर रखा है उनने, यहाँ पे चाय की दुकान खोल दी है और बहुत बढ़िया चाय अच्छी लग रही है, टेस्ट बहुत बढ़िया.
बेरोजगारी बहुत है सर आजकल, इसलिए भैया ने अपना खोल लगा छोटा मोटा काम, ये बहुत अच्छा चल रहा है. यहाँ पर इनका रेगुलर लगाते हैं सर, सुबह 4 से 9 बजे तक लगाते हैं.
Pankaj Pandey opens his tea stall every evening for 2 hours. Bureau Report, India Today.
You've been here in Davos and you're also a Davos veteran. Russia isn't here, China isn't here, but India is everywhere.
India is everywhere. This is India's Davos.
Okay.
I can tell you that I think the world looks up to India.
Okay.
And yesterday in one of the conversations, I was saying that why do we look at +1 strategy? I mean, people bet on emerging market, people bet on certain emerging market over such another and so on. And now it's proven. India is the destination.
Davos
it is the destination.
The name shouldn't change to from Davos to Dev Prayag, right?
देखिए हमारे देश में होगा तो देव प्रयाग ही होगा,
या देवरस
देव प्रयाग देवास जो रखेंगे उस जगह रखेंगे. परंतु यहाँ पे तो डावोस ही है, डावोस में रहेंगे. और यहाँ पे जो हमारा इंडिया का जो जलवा है, जो हमारी डिफरेंट स्टेट्स और हमारी भारत सरकार का और इन्वेस्ट इंडिया बहुत देखने वाला है. मोर और लेस ये कह सकते हैं कि ये इंडिया का WEF है जिसपे बहुत सारे इंटरनेशनल पार्टिसिपेंट आए.
वाह. And what do all the Indian people here, companies, the state governments hope to achieve? What do you think actually comes out of this?
Yesterday I was with Maharashtra Chief Minister and I learned that there is a very clear ambition that I think one of the things that India has done good is that there is a intra-competition, one state over other state. How good I am. I think this is one achievement I would give it to Niti, that they have always provided this leaderboarding, emerging districts which are good, districts which are this and that. So similarly, I think the message here that I see is every state has set up a number target. I need X lakh crore rupees, X thousand crore rupees of MOU and better deals, seniority of deals. So states are here for commercial investments, and I think this is the place to seek the investments. And the best part is that even the Indians who are investing in states, or Indians of us who are looking at our own country, because this is the primary opportunity for every one of us, is also getting an access and having a very comfortable conversation with different government authorities. So it's an incredible place overall for India to meet international people, business and investors, and India to meet India's own entrepreneurs and investors.
Vijay, many CEOs and global CEOs who sat on this seat over the last 2 days keep talking about one thing, the India digital opportunity. Digitization in India is going to change, technology is going to change. What is it really for the Aam Aadmi? I'm happy with Paytm. I do many of my transactions through that. What is digital in the wider context?
I think, look, governance needs to be reaching out to the last mile, last person, the last person in the food chain. And governance stands for governance, and then you look at necessary services, including financial services, which I represent, and many other things, so-called. Now, there used to be a time when we would set up different district headquarters, tehsil headquarter, or block pramukh, or wo sab. Matlab, there used to be a train of physical architecture, if you will, that would be set up. Now,
and officers going to small taluks on posting, movies were made on it.
Movies were made on it, and then you will know that person is doing a service or not. There will be availability, not availability. Ration supply, PDS was the best example, that how tough it is to complete that chain. Now, the best part is that the digitization is an event where the citizen, the customer of these services, is also investing. He's saying, I'm buying a phone, I'm buying internet connection, can you make me available this? So the government schemes, whether it is प्रोत्साहन राशि हो किसी चीज़ की, ग्रांट हो, या फिर कहीं कुछ एप्लीकेशन लगाना हो, स्टेटस देखना हो, मैं कहूँगा कि ये पार्ट जो है वो डिजिटाइजेशन है देश का. और द बेस्ट पार्ट इज दैट कंट्री सिटीजन आर परफेक्टली कंफर्टेबल विद इट, दैट दे कैन मेक आइडेंटिटी, आधार, they can make their own verification that I am this person using their own smartphone, pre-registering. हमने डिजी यात्रा देखा कितना ब्यूटीफुली, मतलब आप देखिए क्यू लगी हुई थी, अब दिल्ली T3 में बिल्कुल भी क्यू नहीं है, और लोग उसके बारे में कितनी अच्छी ट्वीट पोस्ट करते हैं. फिर हम बात करते हैं जो कि मेरा फेवरेट टॉपिक है, पेमेंट्स. देश में अब there was a time when we used to be concerned that small shopkeeper will not be able to actually make a digital payment, receiving digital payment, because the capex investment, obligation to pay the charging fees and so on and so forth. There was a time that was a legitimate challenge. But I'm so happy that Paytm pioneered this QR code, which was a so low cost paper QR that you can stick on a shop. And the trick was again the same, that earlier the shopkeeper had to invest in the computing technology network, and वो उसका 180 डिग्री हो गया. शॉपकीपर सेज कि मेरे पास तो क्यूआर है, अब आपके फोन में देखिए कि आप इसको स्कैन कर लें. And that magic is the magic called digitization of India. And Siddharth, I want to tell you, the emerging market technologies built in India will define the frontier market technologies that will be it. Up till now, the world used to look up to the West. This is the technology, and this is the technology that will be solving the world problem. And Western problem solution are Western problem solution. They are not necessarily in the cultural and the nuances of this country or our emerging markets are at large level. The best part is we as Indians, who used to be the software back office of world, are now the product front office of the world.
That's a very good point, product front office. Vijay, you had tweeted 2 days back, and I want you to explain what you meant and also the conclusions. Is there a use of bank account specific UPI ID or QR? And the answers that are visible to that tweet is yes, please describe use case 42%, no, too much to handle, and almost 56,000 views, significant traction. Why did you put this tweet? What are you driving at?
I was trying to find out how savvy a user is.
Okay.
For example, like you and I are like, there is one app, there is one QR, and we are happy with it, or one bank account. I wanted to see the internet user whom I'm interacting with, how savvy is that person that I have multiple bank accounts and I will need multiple UPI address and QRs. So that if I need money in this bank account, I'm showing different.
But right now it is multiple QRs, right?
Actually, the trick here is that there is a by default, even if you have, let's say, multiple bank accounts, typically apps like Paytm issue single QR code and single UPI address. Now I was asking that would you need multiple of them?
I would say totally no. Oh, why?
Too much to handle?
Yes.
Or it is needed as a power user thing.
So one India, one QR.
One India, one QR and multiple bank account of a single user. Will you need multiple QR for single bank account specific? In other words, it will be the UPI QR.
But what is this 42%? It's not like a sort of overwhelming majority which says too much to handle.
But I want to tell you, this is what I was telling. The use cases are so profound. For example, like आप घर में मान लेते हैं बुटीक शॉप चलाते हो, सूट की दुकान चलाते हो, ट्यूशन टीचर हो, आप कुछ अपना इंडिविजुअल करते हो. देखिए देश की जनता में जो सैलरी जनता है वो बहुत ही फाइनाइटली स्मॉल है. फॉर अ परसेंटेज इफ यू लुक एट इट, इट इज अ वेरी स्मॉल पॉपुलेशन परसेंटेज. सो मोर और लेस सब कुछ अपने हिसाब से, कुछ ट्यूशन कर रहा है, कोई शॉप खोल के बैठा है, कुछ करके बैठा है, तो 2 बैंक अकाउंट रखते होंगे. अब अगर मैं आपके फोन पे एक ही क्यूआर दिखा रहा हूँ तो उनको वहां पे समस्या होती है. तो 40% 42% वो लोग हैं जो ये कहना चाहते हैं देखो ये मेरा बिजनेस यानी कि जो मेरा काम करता हूँ उसका पैसा आता है और ये मेरा पर्सनल पैसा आता है. ये इसका फीडबैक का रिजल्ट था. तो हमने
वन इंडिया वन क्यूआर, EKYC, ये सारी चीजों के बारे में आपने ये बोला. देयर इज अ लॉन्ग
फुल एंड मैं आपको ये KYC पे भी बोलता हूँ. और आप देखिए कितना फॉरवर्ड लुकिंग रेगुलेटर है. मतलब मैं तो ये बताना चाहता हूँ, मैं अपने आप को लकी मानता हूँ और मैं जानता नहीं मेरे से पिछली वाली जनरेशंस में इस तरीके से गवर्नमेंट और रेगुलेटर का सपोर्ट मिलता होगा या नहीं मिलता होगा. क्योंकि अगर आप देखें सिद्धार्थ, हमारे देश में डिजिटल के द्वारा KYC का थोड़े दिन पहले एक सर्कुलर आया था. RBI गवर्नर ने पब्लिक में आके बात करी कि अगर आपकी डिटेल चेंज नहीं हो रही तो आप ईमेल पे कंफर्मेशन दे सकते हैं, ऐप पे कंफर्मेशन दे सकते हैं, चेंज नहीं हो रही हो हम KYC करें. मैं कहता हूँ ये कहाँ होता होगा. मतलब ये तो प्राइवेट कंपनी में एक एम्प्लॉय ने बोला कि सर ये यहाँ पे पार्किंग लॉट खराब है, हम यहाँ से जाते हैं, वो करते हैं, वो थोड़े दिनों में एक नई तरह से रूल आ गया. इतनी एक्सेलरेटेड फाइनेंशियल सर्विस, बैंकिंग, रेगुलेटर रिस्पॉन्स, गवर्नमेंट सपोर्ट, ड्रामेटिक. इंडिया
इज नॉट हैपनिंग एनीवेयर एल्स इन द वर्ल्ड. और चाइना फॉर एग्जांपल,
देखिए मैं आपको एक, चाइना में तो गवर्नमेंट उल्टा काउंटेरियन हो रखी है इस टाइम पे फॉर द बिजनेसेस. सो लेट्स जस्ट लीव दैट.
स्टार्टअप्स को तोड़ने में
काउंटेरियन हो रखी है कि हमें कुछ और एजेंडा है. रेस्ट ऑफ द वर्ल्ड में कहीं हो नहीं रहा ना. आप देखिए ना, जर्मनी जापान को देख लीजिए. अब भारत का जो डिजिटाइजेशन है, इंडियाज डिजिटाइजेशन इज एन एग्जांपल फॉर इवन डेवलप्ड कंट्रीज. इट इज नॉट एन एग्जांपल फॉर ओनली द इमर्जिंग मार्केट.
Mishra, the first Indian designer ever to showcase at the Paris Haute Couture Week, is back at the global stage and will be showcasing his new collection amidst global giants like Schiaparelli, Christian Dior, Iris van Herpen, Jean-Baptiste Valli and many others. Gaurav Gupta becomes the 3rd Indian ever to be invited to showcase at the Paris Haute Couture Week 2023. The Federation de la Haute Couture et de la Mode has invited Gupta from India, and this is touted to be no small feat for an Indian designer. Vaishali Shadangule, who has been the first woman from India ever to have showcased at the Paris Haute Couture Week, is back this year with an off-calendar showcase. India Today caught up with a woman whose work feeds more than 2,500 families of remote villages in India. The Fashion Design Council of India unveils the curtain on FDCI India Men's Weekend in Goa with 11 top designers, a testimony to how men's fashion is gaining prominence and is changing slowly in India. Dhruv Kapoor becomes the first Indian to mount a menswear showcase at the Milan Fashion Week 2023. Ram Charan becomes the only Indian featured on Esquire's Best Dressed Men of 2023 Golden Globe Awards, donning a Tarun Tahiliani outfit. Aditya Birla Group's fabric brand Leva partnered with the 71st Miss Universe held at Orleans, with countries having the freedom to design capes based on their own creative sensibilities.
want to start by getting you to talk about your sense of the R word and the survey put out by the World Economic Forum of global economists seems to say that 70% of them think that a recession is around the corner this year.
So Rahul, the way I would describe the outlook is that we have a tough year ahead, 2023, but we certainly are seeing signs of resilience around the world. So in terms of a global recession, I think we are still a fair bit away from it. Now, it could happen. We could end up if there were more downside risks that emerged. But in terms of our projections, which we'll actually put the numbers out at the end of this month, we're not in a global recession territory. Now, of course, there are individual countries that are closer to a recession than others are, and that's something that several people are talking about. There's still the war. We still have inflation that's high and monetary policy tightening that continues, and we'll see the consequences of it. So we should see a global economy that slows this year. But by the second half of this year, we expect to see a recovery and then a rebound into 2024. So that's how I would describe the outlook.
But the one other perspective that I'm hearing is that things aren't quite as bad as initially imagined. When people were talking about what might happen in Europe during the winter because of the energy crisis and the manner in which the war was playing itself out, would you say that some of those worst case scenarios haven't really played out and a slowdown, even if it's a sharp slowdown, is more likely than out and out recession?
So that's the part when I said that there are signs of resilience. You're exactly right. I would say compared to our forecasts in October last year, the US and the Europe surprised on the upside. US because labor markets continue to remain strong. Europe because the winter turned out to be warmer than feared. So that has both helped. And then we have China. So China moved dramatically away from its zero COVID policy. So we're going to have a couple of months where things are going to be very tough in China, but then we expect to see a rebound happening in China's economy. So there are certainly some positive turning points, but let's not get ahead of ourselves. I think we still have a difficult time ahead.
Tonight at 9 p.m. on the news today with me, Rajdeep Sardesai. A BBC documentary on the 2002 Gujarat riots is blocked by the Modi government using emergency powers. Is this censorship as the opposition alleges, or simply the government asserting its rights? That's going to be a big talking point on the news today. Also, why is Delhi Justice Sodhi claiming that the Supreme Court has hijacked the Constitution? He's our newsmaker today. And we'll find out why on Parakram Day, the Bharat Jodo Yatra finds itself in a controversy. All that and much more on the news today.
Co-presented by Star Health Insurance, the health insurance specialist. Co-presented by Panasonic. Create today, enrich tomorrow. Co-powered by the bold look of Cola. Co-powered by Samsonite. Tested like Samsonite. Indian Oil. Pehle Indian, phir oil.
Good evening, hello and welcome. You're with the news today, Monday night. This is your destination for news. Newsmakers' talking points. Our big talking point tonight, the ban on a BBC documentary on the 2002 Gujarat violence. Is that an overreaction by the Modi government, or is it justified? Is the BBC documentary pushing a fake propaganda as the government alleges? We'll be dissecting and decoding that on the news today. But first, as always, it's time also for the 9 headlines at 9. A bar association unit outfit writes to Home Minister Amit Shah demanding a probe into what they call is an international conspiracy into the BBC Modi film. JNU cancels a screening, saying it could disturb peace. The Congress finds itself on the back foot after its MP Digvijay Singh asked the Modi government for proof of surgical strikes. Congress party distances itself from the remark, says it's Digvijay Singh's personal view.
So, Digvijay ji,
India celebrates the 129th birth anniversary of Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose. Memorial proposal dedicated to the freedom fighter in Andaman and Nicobar Islands, even as a political war over his legacy escalates. Law Minister Kiran Rijuju keeps the heat on the SC collegium system, says there is no public scrutiny on Indian judges once appointed, adds that the government-backed representatives won't interfere in the collegium. A big boost to the naval submarine fleet. Indian Navy commissions INS Wagir, the Sand Shark, third submarine to be added in 24 months. A tech winter now comes to India as well after Microsoft, Amazon in the West, Wipro among several tech giants to slash their workforce by thousands. Next could be Spotify that could lay off 6% employees. Major cities in Pakistan go without electricity this morning after a national grid breakdown. Citizens outrage over the poor infrastructure. No bids from Chennai Super Kings and Gujarat Titans for the women's IPL. RCB, KKR, Rajasthan Royals and Sunrisers Hyderabad among the applicants. An Indian batter KL Rahul and actor Atiya Shetty tie the knot at a private ceremony in Lonavala. Pictures go viral on social media. But first tonight, the news that's breaking at this moment, there's been another fallout over the BBC's documentaries on Prime Minister Narendra Modi and the Gujarat violence of 2002. Now the JNU administration has cancelled a screening that was planned of the controversial Modi documentary, saying it may disturb peace and harmony on the campus. The screening was set to be organized by the JNU Students' Union. Already, remember, the centre has issued clear instructions calling for the blackout of the documentary that looks back at the 2002 riots. BBC Two had aired the documentary last week and it has stirred a strong reaction with different viewpoints being expressed across political party lines. So the Students' Union that had planned the film screening has been now warned that there can be no screening of that documentary. Now, all this controversy over this documentary signals just how the scars of 2002 continue to, in a way, divide the political class. With YouTube and Twitter links to the BBC film now banned by the Modi government, the opposition claims this is a form of censorship. Meanwhile, the centre has raised an alarm over the BBC documentary, calling it a motivated act against the Modi government and a propaganda film designed to tarnish India's image. Before we come to our talking point tonight, just take a look as to why this particular documentary has created such a stir.
A two-part BBC documentary on the Gujarat riots made 20 years after it took place has left the government of India fuming. The response to the film, which is critical of Narendra Modi's handling of the riots when he was the Chief Minister of the state, has been swift and stern. The government has exercised emergency powers vested in it under the Information Technology Rules 2021 to block the documentary on YouTube and Twitter. The rules allow the government to remove any content in the interest of India's sovereignty, security, ties foreign nations and to maintain law and order. While the BBC has not aired the documentary in India, but clips from the first episode were being uploaded by users on the social media platforms, many of which have now been removed. The opposition is crying censorship. TMC MP Derek O'Brien tweeted a message from Twitter flagging a clip from the film posted by him. Another TMC MP, Mahua Moitra, posted an archive link to circumvent the ban, a route taken by many others. The BJP, on the other hand, is crying conspiracy and accusing the British broadcaster of insulting the country's judiciary, which gave a clean chit to Prime Minister Modi.
In the last several years, the opposition and Congress in particular have tried to politicize the unfortunate Gujarat riots. But Prime Minister Modi stands vindicated in the Supreme Court and in the court of the people.
स्वीकार कर लिया कि जो उसमें दिखाया जा रहा है और बोला जा रहा है वो सत्य है। मैं पुनः उनको याद दिलाऊंगा, भारत के प्रधानमंत्री जी को, कि आपके लिए जो वाजपेयी जी ने बोला था, राजधर्म निभाओ, राजधर्म, सच से डरो मत।
Opposition leader Asaduddin Owaisi wondered if the government will impose a similar ban on a film being made on Mahatma Gandhi's assassin.
मोदी सरकार ने उस बीबीसी के इंटरव्यू को अंग्रेजों के बनाए हुए कानून के तहत इंडिया में, भारत में, यूट्यूब पर, ट्विटर पर इसको बैन लगा दिया।
The documentary by the national broadcaster of United Kingdom is embarrassing for the leadership of both UK and India at a time the two nations are in talk for a trade deal. India's Ministry of External Affairs has trashed the documentary as propaganda.
We have a High Commission, we have information to that video. Okay, so that is not being screened here. I am repeating again. We think it's a propaganda piece. Our assessment is a propaganda piece. Now, how can you say that? I'm saying it. We have seen it and I feel it's a propaganda piece. I don't know what's the perspective. You could say it's not aired here. True.
We need to go the extra mile.
Prime Minister Modi has found support in UK's Parliament. Lord Karan Billy Moria came out in support of the Indian Prime Minister, lavishing praise on him.
Today, Narendra Modi is one of the most powerful people on this planet as Prime Minister of India. Today, India has a presidency of the G20. Today, India has a vision in the next 25 years to be the second largest economy in the world with a GDP of $32 billion. The UK must be the closest and trusted friend of partner of India in the decades ahead.
Censorship is neither new to Indian government nor BBC. The BBC was expelled from India from 1970 to 1972 by the Congress government over negative portrayal of India. It was again expelled in 1975 due to emergency. With Aishwarya Paliwal, Bureau Report, India Today.
So let's raise the big questions. Is a ban on the BBC documentary on Gujarat 2002 an overreaction? Or is the BBC documentary guilty of pushing what the government says is a fake propaganda? Should the government rebut the documentary point by point instead of banning it? Is censorship a sign of weakness? Is Gujarat 2002 a closed chapter? These are some of the questions I'll raise. Ashok Sajanar is former diplomat. He, remember, is one of those who signed a petition calling for this documentary to be censored and banned. Professor Shruti Kapila is Professor of Indian History and Global Political Thought at the University of Cambridge. Shashi Shekhar Vempati is former CEO at Prasar Bharati. And Shadan Farasat is a Supreme Court senior advocate. Appreciate all of you joining us. I'm also going to go first to P. Sainath, senior journalist and Magsaysay Award winner, who I spoke to earlier because he has taken a very public stand against the government's decision. Sainath, you've come out very strongly against this government decision to censor this documentary. The government says it's a propaganda film peddling a discredited narrative, which is why they are censoring it, claiming it's pure propaganda. How do you respond? Is the government not entitled to censor something they believe is propaganda?
Firstly, Rajdeep, the question of whether the censorship is justified is itself unjustified. The government has not been able to show us that, when you call for restriction, you show that it is incitement to violence or incitement to hatred or full of lies, in which case you can tell us what those lies are, you can tell us what the thing is, and build some rationale for your action. But I'm saying, Rajdeep, that this takes away from the larger questions within which this whole thing is happening. If this is a question today at all, it's because the punishment has been handed out to the BBC, whose standing and clout in the world of media ensures it gets discussed at all. Rajdeep, much worse happens every single day to Indian journalists, but merits no discussion in a media which has descended largely to its lowest, most cowardly and craven point in its 200-year history. Indian governments have always been sensitive to criticism that emanates from the West, and the present one is landed in a dilemma. On the one hand, we've been telling the public that Mr. Modi has transformed India's image in the world. We can hold our heads high. On the other hand, when something critical of the Modi government emerges from the West, we have to call it a conspiracy. Look at this. Every single index, the UN Human Development Index, the COVID figures are a conspiracy. The UN Human Development Index rating us at 132 out of 188 nations, a conspiracy. The Global Hunger Index, you've said it in Parliament, it's a conspiracy, where we are 107 out of 121 out of 121 nations. The Environmental Performance Index, where we manage the fantastic score of 180 out of 180, is a conspiracy. And Rajdeep, for you and me, look at the word